Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Wrestle Plug podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Nix, as you know. Now, joining me this week is a rather unique international talent, somebody I'm quite excited to have on. He's incredibly volatile, just like me, which is perfect. That's why he's on the podcast. Everyone talks about my opinions being volatile. Well, this man is the very definition of volatile because he is, of course, volatile. TJ Charles, welcome to the podcast, sir.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Volatile, yeah, I guess maybe not in real life, but definitely.
What are you calling yourself volatile for?
Definitely in the ring. At least I attempt to be. That's the goal.
Yeah, very volatile, particularly when it comes to throwing a hand. So, and rightfully so with your background. So now, obviously, a lot of people will be watching this and thinking, I haven't seen TJ Charles before, but as always, Wrestle Plug is always throwing curveballs at our fans, and we've had a wonderful plethora of talents, everything from X Division champions all the way down to trainees from, tiny little islands in the middle of nowhere. And that's the great thing about this podcast is everyone gets a crack and a chance to promote themselves. So rather quickly, for anyone who may not necessarily know what the volatile one is all about, tell us very quickly kind of, what you bring to the table and what's your style in the ring.
My style, I don't know, it's changed so many times over the years since I started. I mean, it used to kind of look like, or at least I used to try and make it look like 1907 cruiserweight WCW style, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Chris Jericho. I guess I've got older. I've gotten really attached to like grappling, that kind of style. Do a little bit of jiu-jitsu. I'm a white belt. I'm not anyway proficient. I'm just gonna throw that out there immediately. So I try to like blend my like love of like I guess like actual wrestling and like a very old school style of wrestling with throwing myself over the top rope and through tables, and I like to throw myself around the place with like little regard to myself. I mean, pretty much. And I think that's kind of where the volatile part kind of came into play when I was, I don't know, progressing through the business. As I started to realize that some of the stuff I do kind of comes out of nowhere and people don't really see it coming, which I mean is volatile in the description of the word, I guess. So yeah, it's a mix. I like to get down and grapple some people, but if I need to throw myself out of the ring in a tope, I mean, I've no problem doing that either. So yeah, that's kind of my mix of styles that I've kind of had over the last 9+ years. So yeah, it's interesting, I guess.
Normally, I don't ask the boring questions. Who's your favorite wrestler? Where did you get started? All that kind of stuff. However, what's quite cool about you is obviously you're based abroad, but you've moved from a different country, which is where you learned to train. People might have noticed you have just a small accent on you. We're very lucky here. I've travelled to Ireland to see wrestling, but I know that you're not based in Ireland, but that's where you got your start. Tell us a little bit about that, like the initial start for you, and also what kind of age were you? Because despite the fact that you look incredibly young, you're actually in your 30s now. So
yeah. Well, I thank you for the compliment, first of all.
I'm glad I had a shave. I'm starting to look slightly younger now. So
I mean, I guess when I was a teenager, I like wanted to wrestle, but at that age, I didn't really know what indie wrestling was. I was really young and there wasn't really a huge scene for it in Ireland at the time. So it wasn't really a thing. So you watch WWE and WCW and that stuff growing up, and it always seems like, how could you even do that? Like, what does that even look like? And then I actually read Chris Jericho's first book when I was 18 or 19. And I don't know, I guess the similarities between his height and weight when he first started and my height and weight, because I'm not a big guy. I'm just going to throw it out there right now. I'm just not. It's just genetics. And I kind of just was like, well, maybe I could do that. If he started at my height and weight, started at my height. He didn't get any taller, obviously.
Stretched himself out over time.
Yeah. I mean, I thought maybe I could, and I asked some friends if they knew any schools in Ireland, and just did some Googling, and I found Irish Whip Wrestling at the time. And I just literally emailed them. I was 19, coming on 20 when I first started. Got a bus down to Dublin to go to one of their shows. They used to run trainings just before shows, and just kind of walked in going, hey, can someone show me how to do this? And then that's how I kind of got my start. And I used to go then to the shows every weekend because they didn't have a school at the time, which was kind of crappy, but I mean, you kind of got used to just traveling around immediately, because if I wanted to train, I had to go every weekend to the shows to train before the show. So that's kind of how I started. I just started off there, and then wrestled in Ireland maybe 5 years or so, I think. Yeah, 5 or so years. And then I took a bit of a hiatus from wrestling before I moved here. That's another story. We can get into that at some time if you want. But took a hiatus from wrestling then. And then when I moved back here, I found a school immediately, and just kind of the same thing. I didn't even email them actually. I just walked up to the front door when they had school and had my bag on my back and said, "Hello, I don't speak Spanish. Can I train here?" And they were like, "Yeah, come on in." So yeah.
Great English, bless them, don't they? That's kind of the hope for me. I'm like, "Hi, I'm stupid. Would you mind training me, please?"
Yeah, that was kind of my hope.
Yeah. So obviously with Ireland, and obviously growing up there and training there, we've had Irish talents on before, and one of the big things with Ireland was that, until kind of guys like Fergal Devitt obviously got the training going, and the promotions and things of that nature, it was a really starved area, which is amazing when you think now it's starting to become almost a superpower. I mentioned to you before we started recording having LJ Cleary on, who is helping to really build an incredible boom, and then of course COVID hits and ruins everything for everybody. But with Ireland, and obviously starting to train there at that time, especially going to Irish Whip, like you say, no actual training, just kind of going to shows and doing kind of, seminar sort of style stuff beforehand, because that's the only way you could really get your hands on any proper training. Was Fergal Devitt around there at the time and things of that nature? Or, like, for instance, who was the individual who, like, you had most of the hands-on training experience with?
Sure. So, I mean, I would have loved if Fergal was there at the time. He was definitely in the Irish scene, but he wasn't involved with Irish Whip. I mean, at the time, he was going back and forth to Japan a lot, and he wasn't, I mean, he was in the scene, of course, and he was, I guess, very popular on the UK scene and the European scene in general. But in the school I was involved with, unfortunately not. The main guy that I would kind of attribute to training me would be a guy called Mandrake. His real name Garth Kidd, pretty badass dude who's a black belt in Taekwondo. So that was
the Irish not fight well enough, right?
He's an intimidating dude has this like crazy hard demeanor, but he's a sweetheart underneath it all. And he kind of like, I don't know, I'm very gratefully for it now. Took me under his wing when I was just this, well, still skinny, but skinnier little kid who like didn't really know what the hell he was doing and wanted to learn how to do a headlock. So he was the guy who was like, okay, I'll take this guy. I'll make him my, I don't know, project. I can't think of a better word for it, but yeah. So I have a lot to thank him for. He definitely took care of me in the beginning.
Yeah, Ireland's pedigree of trainers goes like, I mentioned Fergal Devitt. I'm always curious because everyone comes back to him, particularly if you're outside of Ireland. But I don't think that's fair on guys like you said, like Garth. You've obviously got guys like Paddy Morrow and things like that.
Yeah.
Really lent themselves beautifully and, helped out, especially with NWA Ireland as well, which was, very important to keeping the scene alive. And those guys get missed a little bit in translation because it's nice to, oh, look, Becky Lynch and Finn Balor, huge Irish stars. And it's like, well, try not to forget about all the other guys who put in so much work to help keep that scene alive. Ireland, obviously, I imagine when you first started, obviously touring around, it's not that much of an opportunity when you first start. It's not like now where you can be like, cool, I can wrestle for like 25 different promotions wherever I go. And England is just like spoiled rotten. It's disgusting how many promotions we have. Everything from the tiniest things to the biggest companies like Progress. So what facilitated the need to move? Was that more of a lifestyle choice than it was in terms of pursuit of wrestling?
Yeah, I guess so. It's like the wrestling. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There wasn't a lot then. There was companies and guys were definitely there, like, but there just wasn't a bigger scene now because of like the likes of OTT, for example, have like drawn a lot of eyes to Irish wrestling, which is fantastic. And not to say that the guys weren't there, because obviously people like Paddy, as you mentioned, and Paul Tracy and all these guys were wrestling, but the scene just hadn't boomed yet as much as it has now, unfortunately. But yeah, at the time it was just a lifestyle choice. I decided to move countries. I wasn't really involved in wrestling that much. I'd kind of pulled away from it a little bit. So yeah, when I moved here, I kind of I don't know, when I was like refiguring my life, I was like, maybe I need to get back to that, because that was like great. And that was when I was my happiest. So when I first moved here, it was one of my first goals was to try and find a school. And Spain doesn't have a huge amount of schools. So I was lucky to move to a city that had one right in the city center. So that was pretty cool immediately. But yeah, it wasn't a move for wrestling so much. It was definitely just lifestyle choice of needing to move countries, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, I'm going to say, like, I don't want to offend you because, like, obviously, you know, but at the same time, Wrestle Plug is very blunt, I suppose. The Irish have quite a rich tradition and history. I think that's fair to say, of traveling and, you know, settling and, you know, really helping benefit other areas. There's kind of the stereotype in there. You can always find an Irish bar and all that. But, you know, for a lot of us, that's actually a nice kind of warmth, I suppose, to, you know,
Yeah.
to have that. That was something I noticed when I first went to Madrid, for instance. I was just like, oh, thank God I can go to the Irish bar because I'm using this language. And now I'm much older and realize it's actually kind of cool to learn different languages and things. But at that time, I was like, I just need a drink. As you do.
I feel you.
Yeah, we all need a drink badly, especially right now. But yeah, like obviously, you know, you move over to Spain. How did you find the culture shock, for lack of a better term? Was it something that you picked up pretty quickly? Was it a case of you'd spent time in Spain before anyway, so you were kind of like ready for that kind of culture and things of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, I'd been here on holidays, but very similar to yourself, where, you know, I didn't really understand what was going on. And, you know, I was younger and I was just like, I want to have a drink and I'd like be on holidays. So yeah, I'd moved here, but I'd been here before, but it was very different than moving here, of course, because when you live here, it's you're not on holidays, you're not going to the beach every day, you're not going to the bar every day. Like, you have to live here. And I think for me, like, having wrestling and being surrounded by people who are always training in Spanish and training in a mix of Spanish and English definitely helped me to like integrate really quickly and make friends and like, yeah, settle in here really fast. So I mean, I will always say that wrestling is amazing, but it has helped me in so many different points in my life, including then when I was here and, like, you know, I didn't have the language, and it helped me, like, I don't feel like I was part of the country. So yeah, it's been really nice, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Spain's growing as well. The scene is
Yeah.
growing, and obviously a lot of people will put that down to guys like White Wolf, obviously, and the work they've put in. In the time that you've spent, like, how many years now have you been based in Spain?
Around 5, I think. Yeah, five.
So in
Five
that
years.
time, yeah, I mean, I imagine, I'm not sure if this would apply to you, but would you attribute the success of guys like A-Kid and Carlos Romo, especially, to the growth of independent wrestling in Spain?
Yeah, I mean, those guys have put in a lot of work to, like, I mean, first of all, I mean, grow themselves too as performers and get better. And I mean, they both traveled like a tremendous amount. Like, I mean, I know A Kid, I've spoke to him about this stuff and how many times he would go to the UK just to train, you know, like even if he wasn't booked kind of thing, he would just be going just because he wanted to get better and he wanted to be, you know, people to know he was part of the scene and, you know, he wanted to wrestle places. So I think, I mean, not solely because of those guys. I mean, everyone that worked hard to trying to build a scene here, and it's definitely grown over the last 5 years. Or I mean, it's probably been growing for much before that, before I was here, obviously. And but those guys have definitely helped put it on the map, especially now A-Kid being in WWE. Of course, you know, people pay much more attention to those kind of things. And also, like, they were able to bring in guys to wrestle him, like Ricochet and Zack Sabre Jr. and those kind of talents that were able to, I guess, not only like help him get better, which obviously they would have because those guys were already much, I mean, established, but also like grow the name of the companies like Triple W and stuff, and just draw attention to the whole country and to draw attention to, like, hey, there is wrestling over here. Like, hey guys, like, you know, because I mean, I feel like scenes in the world, like the US and Mexico, UK, Japan, like these are all like the big ones that everyone knows. Like, there's like, oh yeah, there's wrestling here, here, and here, and here. But people forget there's also scenes in like Spain and France and all, like everywhere else, you know, because just because they're not, I guess, they haven't had a huge impact on the history of wrestling. I mean, I guess they kind of get forgotten about a little bit. But I'm glad that like guys like A-Kid are helping to draw more attention to wrestling, because the more eyes on the country, the more eyes on everyone here, and the more eyes on all the different schools, and the better everyone can do. So it can only be good for everyone that he's progressing, you know. So it's only positive in my opinion.
Yeah, it's an incredible success story as well, because what people won't realize, like, I don't know his exact timeline, but I do know that there's a lot. Like, I remember when I had the opportunity to be ring crew for Progress, I had a chance to speak to some guys around that company, and they said that A-Kid, you know, was just a ring crew guy.
Yeah.
He just sort of said, like, you know, I'll come over and do ring crew. And actually, he got his break because I think of the vaunted snow show. Snow kind of shut everything down because obviously, we, as English people, we are woefully ill prepared for everything that is different. Very typical of our culture, I find. And yeah, like they just basically were like, "You can wrestle. We need you to jump in because we haven't got anyone." And from that point onwards, he was a mainstay. But that was a guy who had a 5-star match, a legitimate Dave Meltzer 5-star match with Zack Sabre Jr. So
yeah,
everyone was just like, give him a go, surely. And
yeah.
now
Yeah,
all
I
of a
mean,
sudden he's the Heritage Cup winner, so he's doing well.
yeah, that's exactly like what he was saying to me when I asked him, like, because I've never wrestled in the UK, like I've never, and I want to, like, really badly, like everywhere, top to bottom. Like it's one of my goals for when we get back to normal, whatever normal will look like in the future. When we get back to it, it's like I want to wrestle everywhere. Like I just want to keep wrestling as many people, as many places as I can. But when I asked him, that's exactly what he said. He's like, I wish to just go to Progress and be like, hey, can I be ring crew? And, you know, as you said, at that time, he'd already been wrestling Zack Sabre Jr. and these guys who are like very well established. And here he is sitting at a Progress show on ring crew, which, like, in reality doesn't really match up. You know, he should be on the show if you think about it. But I mean, sometimes you got to just be there and willing to work, and then you'll get your shot. So that's what I'm hoping to do. That's the goal, is the goal for the future.
I'm testament to that. I always say to people, don't be afraid to, you know, knock on doors, try and force them open a little bit, and just make people aware of who you are and your talents, because otherwise you may not necessarily get an opportunity. It's a pretty forceful business in that regard. 5 years based in Spain. Riot City is obviously your sort of home calling, I'd imagine. Mm-hmm. How is the growth, and also does it feel, obviously COVID has played a massive part in that, and obviously, you know, it's like 1.5 years, and I know that Spain, you know, took it incredibly hard, you know, more so than a lot of European countries, actually. I know, obviously, you know, well, you've probably seen just how shit it's been over here, and that's obviously to do with, it's what happens when you have prime ministers of that nature, but that's another story. But at the same time, you know, Spain was, you know, very strict with lockdowns and things of that nature. It wasn't a case of like, oh, you're open, now you're closed, now you're open, now you're closed. Like, how, before COVID hit, how was the growth of your career, would you say, particularly as you're now getting into what should be very much the prime kind of position in terms of your training there, particularly as someone who started much younger as opposed to myself? Like, you know, you've been in the game long enough now that you're thinking, right now it's about getting around the world and growing and things of that nature. Do you feel like Spain has afforded you enough of a building block now to move forward?
Yeah, and the upsetting thing about it is like you feel like you can feel momentum, like when you're building it, you can feel it. And just before lockdown, I felt like I was starting to get momentum, you know, of course. And I was starting to like have some of my best matches I've ever had. Like I was starting to travel a little bit more and get booked in other places. I was able to go back home and wrestle and then still come back here and even go to Italy a little bit. And it was starting to like pick up a bit. And I was wrestling for different companies here too that I hadn't wrestled with before. And then there was things in the pipeline that I won't say in case they still happen, and I don't want to jinx it. There's things that were being set up that were like, felt like, okay, maybe I'm starting to gain some momentum. And, you know, I was starting to get in contact with some people in the UK and hopefully go over to train. And I had organized and actually booked flights to go to Florida for WrestleMania week, to go and just go to shows and like try and make contacts and that kind of thing. And obviously WrestleMania got canceled and WrestleMania week got canceled. So, you know, that kind of just shut down momentum, and it, you know, it's deflating and stuff. And it was very deflating for a very long time during during lockdown. But I think now that things are starting to get a little bit back to normal, you can go back and train, take your bumps, actually go to the gym, that kind of thing. I feel like maybe things will start to pick up again. I hope. I mean, at least that's the dream anyway. But yeah, I feel like, strangely enough, the country that had less of a scene than Ireland was where I started to like build my momentum, which I find kind of weird, but I don't know. It is what it is. I guess it's life. Sometimes things just happen unexpectedly. So yeah, it's been really interesting, and I've had the opportunity to train with like some different guys who've come over here. For example, like Angelico's been here a lot. And he would often come and do, when he was like, he lives here sometimes, but now because of COVID he can't, but he would come almost monthly to do classes and stuff. So I was picking up like lots of lucha skills too, which was very unusual for me like, which I really enjoy. Like, and for me it was cool to like, in my mind I was thinking maybe I won't use this, but if I ever get booked against someone and this is their style, at least I know how to work this style, you know. And imagine if someone like a Pentagon Junior comes over to Europe and he's doing a tour, you know, and you will be given that opportunity because of your skill set, I'd imagine, you know, if you've learned how to do those things. So yeah, I felt like things were picking up, and then unfortunately, you know, things got shut down. But let's hope that they can get back to where they were at least before this. But fingers crossed.
Yeah, I hope so. I do. Yeah, like we're quite lucky this weekend actually. While we're talking, seems to be the first weekend where there seems to have been quite a few British shows actually that ran. A few people have been on my podcast, won titles and all sorts, which is fantastic for them. Something that really interested me. It's a very random question, but I've always wondered this. I love Mexico. That's you mentioned Angelico. He's kind of like my Superman crush, for lack of a better term. Sorry, bud. Like, he knows me reasonably well. He's like, oh god, not this guy again. Every time he sees me at shows, though, he's so polite. I've always had a lot of love for Angelico. He makes time for fans and, you know, guys coming up in the industry that a lot of guys don't actually. They kind of turn their nose up at you and go, you know, on with it, young boy, and whatever. And, you know, Angelico's always kind of shown a lot of class. But I'm always interested because obviously Mexico has that, you know, they speak, obviously their Spanish is slightly different in the way that it's presented and spoken. But obviously there's enough of a crossover. Like, for instance, a Mexican person could come to Spain and they would be understood, you know, you would like to think. But I'm always curious, how big is the crossover there? Because it doesn't seem like, I know it's obviously a lot to ask for guys like Pentagon and Ray Phoenix and Horus and all those kind of guys that kind of, you know, move over and, you know, come over and lend their talents to Spain. And obviously Spain isn't a place that their wrestling scene isn't affluent with money like it is over here, where you can just lob hundreds and hundreds, you know, somebody who's, you know, just like imports everywhere, imports all over the place. Do you think that like Spain would benefit from merging and using, you know, Mexico more if it had the opportunity in terms of their talents and things of that nature? Because you got to feel that there would be a certain comfort zone that Mexican and Spanish wrestlers would be afforded working back and forth between those two countries.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it would take a lot of work to do something like that. Because I mean, as you mentioned, I think the ability to get exports here for a lot of companies, aside from White Wolf, I mean, and even those guys can't always get exports because, I mean, as you said, there's not a lot of money in the scene here. So I think the biggest challenge would be like just getting some sort of basis, like financial base, to like bring in guys regularly. But I mean, yeah, the crossover would match a lot because, I mean, there's a lot of guys here who would wrestle that style already. You know, a lot of guys I train with already wrestle like a lucha style more than, say, a European style. And, you know, being around that, it does influence, you know, because I have a more British Irish style because that's where I'm from and that's where I learned. But it does rub off on you. Like you start to do stuff and you're like, you know, like when you do a roll and you slap the mat like they do in Mexico and stuff. And you're like, what the fuck am I doing? But yeah, it does rub off on you. So, I mean, I think the connection is there. It would be very, very easy for them to transition over here and wrestle here because how they call stuff and how they like how they say stuff is would be exactly the same. I mean, in wrestling, there are certain things that will always be said in English, like because it's just a common phrase, like an international or something like this will always be said in English. But there's certain things that they communicate better with each other in their native language, and I think it would be very beneficial for the guys here and obviously for the scene, like in total. But yeah, I mean, like stuff like stuff gets confused sometimes when I say like duck, like the first time I was here and I was like duck a line, duck it, whatever. And the guy was like, duck, like, you know, a duck.
Yeah,
And I
like
was
an
like,
animal. Yeah.
and I was like, no, like duck your head. And he was like, oh,
Yeah, not
okay.
Peking duck, mate. Come on.
So like, I think, yeah, I think it would only benefit guys here, especially guys learning now and guys who are like coming up and don't have a lot of experience to be even have even Angelico back here would be great for those guys because they've never even learned with him yet, because some of them started training right before lockdown, for example, and then just didn't have the opportunity to even meet him and learn from him. So yeah, I would love to see something like that happen, but I don't know, it would take a lot of building blocks, I think.
The journey you're on right now, you're obviously in Spain. Is Spain somewhere you'd like to maintain as kind of like your home base, or with the passion of wrestling and the growth of it in places like Ireland and Britain in particular, is there that inkling? Is there that kind of natural sort of feeling of I need to head back towards, you know, the home isles and things of that nature to try and get and maximize my opportunities as a wrestler?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the opportunities here have been getting better, as I said, but the opportunities in the UK and Ireland are much bigger for everyone who like at every level to like to grow and to even just get better as a performer. So yeah, there's a huge itch in me now that wants to go back to Ireland, like not to live. I love living here. I don't intend on moving back to Ireland anytime soon because I mean it's cold, it's grey, it's wet, it's a bit miserable sometimes, but you know I much prefer just be here in the sun, you know, not too hot. I have my limits, you know. I tend to melt as a pale person, but no, I think, I mean, I would love to go back and work with other companies I've never worked for. I've done some stuff with a company in the north of Ireland called The Wrestling. They're quite a small promotion. A friend of mine and is one of the guys there. And I've done a lot of shows with those guys, but there's companies there like Titanic and OTT, of course. I would love to work there. Phoenix that are in Cork. I mean, I'm sure I'm missing some now because I'm trying to think of everything and I have 100 things in my head. But there's so many promotions there now that just weren't there when I was younger. That would give me so many opportunities to work with people I'd never worked with before, like as you said, like an LJ Cleary or like a Martina or like a Paddy Morrow, any of these guys who are over there, or Be Cool, who's down in Phoenix, like any of these guys who are, I mean, we would both benefit from working together because I feel like the more you work with people you've never worked with before, like the better you're going to get. And the more you work with the same people over and over, like the more stagnant you get. You just stay like at that same level. And of course, you know, as an Irish person, I would love to be a bigger part of my home scene. You know, that's a part of that is, I guess, ego, and the other part of it is just I being proud of where you're from. You know, you just want to be involved in the scene and like, I mean, hopefully benefit in some way and, you know, help grow it if you can. But hopefully, hopefully, if you guys are listening out there, I would love to come home and work for you. But yeah, let's see.
Ireland has a beautiful pride like no other. I have a lot of family based in Ireland, and you know, Irish people who have settled over on my sort of neck of the woods as well. How do you carry it when you're in somewhere like Spain? Is it nice to kind of implement that Irish identity in your wrestling so people know, but this is clearly not just another Spanish wrestler. This is somebody who stands out a little bit. Did your style, in fact, help you stand out when a lot of people are starting to implement a more lucha-based variety of wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, I guess first, like, I mean, I definitely don't look Spanish, so that helps, I think. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty ginger. That's pretty, like, there's no hiding it.
I'm sitting here with like the full Latin experience as well. Who wrestles in Spain? And like, take a guess.
But I mean, yeah, I've definitely leaned into the Irish thing a lot more as I've gotten more comfortable wrestling here, and as like I've started to grow as a wrestler here, and you know, I've started to perform in front of crowds more. I mean, it's fairly obvious I'm Irish, but I feel like leaning into it more definitely sets me apart. Um, I mean, I might have a ring jacket and it's got a massive Irish flag on the collar. it's like, I wonder where that guy's from. It can't be the Ivory Coast, but because I mean the flag is very similar.
Yes, it is. Although there does seem to be some unique differences between the people, it has to be said.
So yeah, I've leaned into it, and I've definitely tried to like enhance myself as an Irish person here to like get over more. I mean, because you have to stand out no matter where you are. I probably wouldn't stand out back home, so I maybe I'd have to change some things. But and also, yeah, I guess to answer the last part of that question is, I feel like my style is definitely different here than it would than the other guys. I mean, solely because of how I was taught originally, you know. And I feel like in the UK and Ireland, we kind of have a more, I guess, strong style kind of about us, you know, rather than like a lucha style here. Which definitely, like, if you hit someone with a forearm that looks like something from the UK and Ireland compared to sometimes what a lucha forearm looks like, people tend to go, "Oh fuck."
Yeah, you're trying to shoot on them, don't they?
Yeah.
Like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and then of course, like as I said earlier, like I really enjoy like a grappling style of wrestling, like a very mat based, and like I'll try to lean into like some jujitsu I've learned too to try and like and add that as well. And that also makes me, I can stand out because not a lot of guys here do that kind of style. And it's not because they can't, it's just because it's not their style. It's not how they were taught. And I mean, they can definitely go if they're pushed to go in that style. But it's just, yeah, it's definitely helped. And it's been very beneficial, I think, to help, I mean, both grow myself, but also like grow my confidence in the ring and like believe in myself a bit more. Because when you start to stand out and you start to realize, maybe I'm okay at this, you know, then you start to, the wheels start turning, you start getting more momentum and things start to generally get a little bit better. So yeah, I think so.
Talk to me about Riot City. It's got a huge identity in Spain. It's one of the most recognizable places. It was the first company that I recognized because I noticed Angelico was booked for a show there many moons ago, and I was like, oh, cool. Like, you know, I like everybody, I had that kind of ignorance of, and that's why ever since the podcast started, I really like leaning towards countries that don't necessarily have a huge identity in independent wrestling like we do, because growth's so important. I like the idea of just shining that spotlight in different areas and not just continuously looking for, you know, that specific area, because I feel like in some ways that's been done to death as well. And it's actually really nice to kind of, you know, it's like a documentary format, isn't it? You want to find out about fresh, new, exciting places. If you were told consistently, you watched a series where all you ever saw was Dublin and London and things of that nature, well, you just get bored because we've all seen that. And also it does a disservice, I think, to the European identity of wrestling. You know, wrestling is a worldwide identity. It's not just Japan, America, England, you know, the usual kind of places. So Riot City, it's been going for a little while now. It's grown an identity. It has a training facility. It runs a reasonable amount of shows regularly. Do you feel like it's something that has the potential to be even bigger, to get to a level like a Progress has, which in many ways came out of nowhere in a country that was already building other brands?
Sure. I'm not to correct you on your own podcast, but it's just
No,
Riot.
please do, yeah.
It's just Riot. There's no city. It's just Riot Wrestling. Sorry.
Absolutely. No, I don't want to upset. The Spanish are very fiery as well, so I don't want to.
You're not wrong.
My apologies to Riot Wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, again, to touch on momentum, like before lockdown, I felt like not only myself, but like the shows we were running and the quality of matches we were putting on, and like just the audiences we were drawing in, and the regular audiences, like people who would return every month, because we would run shows once a month at least. And we also have like I guess like a little sister show called Rage, which is more for guys from the academy to get their get their chops in front of an audience, which, you know, also had its own following. Like people would come to that too, and they had their own specific people who would only come to those shows and that kind of thing. So I felt like both shows like that we were running, which would be like 2 or 3 times a month, we'd run like one Riot, one Rage show, and then sometimes we'd do a dark show in the academy, again for the guys who didn't have a lot of experience, to get them ready to wrestle in front of a crowd. And I just feel like, and it's disappointing now because, you know, momentum stops when everything stops, but we were definitely getting to a point where people were starting to pay more attention to us, and we were getting guys in from outside more often. Like we had ELP over here, and we had Chris Brooks and Kid Lycos over here, and like they were over here helping our guys get better and also putting on better shows. And I think we were starting to get like, not to a progress level, I don't think, but I mean, maybe one day we could have gotten to a level where we were like doing good, like doing much better than we had been in the past. But yeah, it's unfortunate again just to talk about it now, you know, at this stage whenever things have all stopped. But we're starting to put on shows again, dark shows, you know, just for the guys to get the ring rust off with no audience, that kind of stuff, pre-recorded things. And there's plans of shows coming up as we start to open up. I mean, we're not in a high alert stage anymore here, so things are starting to get a little bit more normal. There are plans to open up travel again, which would mean, you know, guys could leave and guys could come in, and we hopefully could retain that momentum and kind of get back to that stage. But now I'm happy, just because I coach in the school too. I'm just happy to get back to that, you know, because we're now open again and we're running classes every day, and we have to train in masks, which for me is not a problem. The only thing is it gasses me out really quick.
Oh, yeah, I'm a terrible gas tank anyway. Someone put a mask on me.
Yeah, it's just like running up and over drills with a mask. It's just absolutely terrible. So as a wrestler in the company and as a coach in the school, for now, I'm taking just a lot of pleasure in the fact that we can get back to doing classes and get back to people, you know, getting into the ring and rolling around and having fun. So hopefully that momentum will continue once we start being able to do shows again. Fingers crossed. I've said fingers crossed like 100 times in this.
That's because we're all praying for a better normality. That's what, my friend. That's not a problem. Riot, Rage, a lot of things that were happening, like you say, and now it's starting to open up again. But for you personally, you, like you said, you're looking to work abroad again. You're looking to work everywhere to, you know, improve your craft. And, you know, like I said, like you're at an age now where a lot of wrestlers see themselves entering their prime. Some wrestlers, like there's a very sort of, there's almost like a kind of weird club in America I've noticed with guys where it's like you actually don't hit your prime until you're in your 40s, which is good news for me because I haven't hit any kind of prime yet, so I don't know what's going on. I'm realizing just not very good, to be honest. Very shit wrestler. It's as simple as that. You know, just struggle with the basics, but for some reason get booked. Okay, fair enough. For me, like I look at your career trajectory and I think that's kind of cool. Actually, you might have gone under the radar, if that's fair to say, despite the fact that you've done a lot of amazing stuff and you're now training over there, and you know you've taken that big leap. People don't realize that it's not an easy thing to, you know, go to another country, to adapt to that culture and things like that. It's a good thing, obviously, but it's going to be difficult. And not everybody adapts or finds themselves relating to a culture as quick as others can do, particularly if you're not as nomadic or things of that nature. What's the kind of initial look for you? Do you still have the bucket list, the goals, things of that nature? Or is it a case of, I've been starved of wrestling for so long that I just want to make sure that I can now plant myself again and have the opportunity to work regularly?
I guess it's kind of a bit of both. I mean, yeah, I'm just, I don't know, fucking hungry to get wrestling again, I guess is like the simplest way to put it. I had a bucket list and I had things I wanted to tick off that list before, which I mean hasn't gone away. For example, I would love to do a show with A-Kid. I've never wrestled him before, and he's been in Riot, so it's not outside the realms of possibility, of course. So yeah, it's a mix for me. Like I would love to wrestle guys like Mike Bailey, and I mean, as much as it would suck getting chopped, I would love to wrestle guys like Walter. You know, so my list varies from guys who are at the top to the bottom and everyone in the middle. And I would love to get back home and wrestle my one of my very good friends who I've wrestled 1,000 times is wrestles under Campbell Craig. Gonna put him over, just you know, why not? He's a good friend of mine and wrestles under Campbell Craig back in Ireland, and just yeah, man, you should. He's a great dude. You should have him on. If you like hip hop, he'll talk to you for hours about it.
Cool.
But yeah, and he's on my list too, even though like I've wrestled him, like we started almost at the same time, and I don't know how many matches we've had, but I want to wrestle him again because I miss it. So my list is weird. It's very mixed bag of things, and I have different goals that I would love to do. I mean, I want to get to a point where I could be comfortable enough to wrestle every weekend. You know, that would be my main first goal, I guess, coming out of lockdown is I would like to be able to go to some country or some place or here every weekend and just wrestle in front of people and enjoy myself and entertain some people. That's kind of like the goal at the moment. Yeah. And I guess at the top of the independent list for me, because it's my home country, would be to obviously wrestle for OTT at some point, because they're the top of the Irish scene and they have been for a few years. And of course, momentum again, they were on such a huge rise before this. I mean, I don't know if you saw the card they had booked, just it got cancelled before lockdown, where they had Pac on it. He was supposed to wrestle LJ Cleary. John Moxley was supposed to be on it. Like there was so many things that they were supposed to do that unfortunately got stopped because of this. And I would love to be part of that momentum and be part of that show and just like experience wrestling in the National Stadium, which is a building that I did security for TNA in a long time ago. And I would love to like wrestle there as part of OTT and like have that full circle moment where at one point I had to take Austin Aries' jacket off him because I was sitting beside the ring, and then to be able to be on the opposite side of that would be incredible, I think.
Well, no, you mentioned it. We've got to talk about it, haven't we? TNA. You know, getting to work in a national stadium, like you say, that I imagine that would have been when they did the kind of first initial big international style tours. I think they did Wembley Arena in that tour as well.
Yeah.
Which I was actually at. I didn't work at it, but I was in the crowd, and I can't remember who it was. One of the wrestlers told me to F off. I'm trying to think which one. I think it might have been Buddy Ray. Which makes sense actually. I've been hitting the head too many times. What was that like? What was the experience like? You know, getting a chance to work somewhat for TNA, or at least be that close to the product.
It was insane. I mean, just in that one word, it was really, really like surreal for me because, I mean, there was guys there like on the show, like Sting, like was just there. Like, I mean, and you know, we were doing ring crews, so we had to show up early, help set up the ring and that kind of stuff. It was me and the group of guys, including my friend Campbell, who I mentioned, just helping him out and setting up the ring and stuff like that. And in the beginning, it was like sitting around and you're putting the boards on the ring and you're thinking like, oh, it's just another show. But then the guys who are at that level start arriving. Like you see your Kurt Angles and your Bully Rays and your and your Stings. And for me, a huge personal favorite, Christopher Daniels. Like these kind of like people start arriving, and you're like, oh shit, okay. And like I was much younger then, and like I hadn't wrestled as long, and I was just sitting around, kind of like with my eyes, like, oh my god, this is crazy. And then to get to watch the show, the main event was like a cage match between Aces and Eights, Kurt Angle. I can't remember who else was in it, but it was just like a big ass, like 8-man cage match kind of thing. And I remember there was a moment where they bumped Earl Hebner into the cage, and like he goes down and he's right in front of me. And I was like, well, someone has to carry him out because like that's the spot, like we hadn't been told that was the spot, but I was like, that's the spot. And he crawls up to me and he puts his arm around me, and I'm like looking at Earl Hebner like, what the fuck is happening?
The royalty of referees.
And he's just like, he starts selling like, am I bleeding? I'm like, no, like what? But in my head I'm like, this is fucking insane. I'm carrying Earl Hebner backstage. And it was a crazy ass day, but it was awesome, man. It was a really cool experience. And it was also not as a fan, also as a fan, to like be there and see Earl Hebner and like experience that moment and see these guys and like all that stuff, but also to see how they work, and how they book a show and how they set up and how they produce the show and how they have their meetings and stuff. And to be kind of on the inside of that for one day was really, really interesting because, I mean, it's still a show. They still book it like normal people. Like they don't do anything strange. But it was just very interesting to be on the inner workings for a day and be at that level of like inner workings to see what other people do and like how it all works. And yeah, it was awesome. It was really awesome.
I love hearing stories about ring crew because I feel like because I'm, full disclosure, I'm an awful wrestler. I'm not very good. I really struggle with a lot of the simple stuff. Because I don't know if it's just because of my size or just because I'm an incompetent fuck, but I can't. I might ask you actually afterwards. Someone please teach me how to pop up back on my feet after doing lucha rolls. I have to keep pushing myself back up slightly, and it frustrates me. And I'm like, everyone else can do it. Why can't I do it? And it's like, and then all of a sudden they're like, scoop slams. Yep, can do that fine. I can do net breakers. I can do that stuff. And then they're like, right, do an international. I'm like, I'm blowing up. What's wrong with me? I can't do this. It's like wrestling is so fucking hard, and people need to appreciate just how hard it is. And I'll be. Full disclosure, I almost got into it with that sense of I want to respect the art and the craft more. But I remember doing the ring crew stuff, and like you say, you get those moments, don't you, where you've got your brush with like fate. And I remember Trent Seven coming over, he's like, hold my Atlas Championship for me. I'm like, thank you. And then at the end of the show, that's I don't know if you've seen it, Jimmy Havoc did a balcony dive he wasn't supposed to do. I was underneath, and he threw William Eva down first, and William Eva just basically crotched me right in the face. I was like, "Thank you, William Eva." Those kind of things. I was like, "Great, I'm the biggest guy here. I guess I'll take his crotch in the face. Why not?" It's those kind of things where you think, but you'll remember those, when you start wrestling, or even if you get to a certain point. And I love those stories, and I think it's cool that they're told. I don't know how much you know about this podcast, but we have something called the vaunted word association game, which I like to throw at people. Cool. Now, I won't bombard you too much because obviously you will be. I don't want to be disrespectful, but I'm also very honest. I imagine most people watching this probably this will have been their first exposure to you. However, yeah, I think that's how it is. I think you're very cool, and I always have the word association game. So what I do is I ask the fans, I always let them know we've got so-and-so coming on, throw some names out there. And I ask you, and obviously you can give me one word that you think best describes this wrestler. I understand that some wrestlers like to be more diplomatic than others. Some people don't seem to give a shit, which is a bit surprising. So I guess some people just don't care if they get booked or not, judging from some of the words I've had. If you feel that one word isn't enough, I'm more than happy for you to venture off. Some of these are very kind of cookie cutter, so apologies in advance, but these are picked by our fans. Cool. So one word, if you can, to describe Finn Balor.
Can I have 3 words?
Of course you can.
Hard as fuck.
He looks
yeah. Just, based on, you remember he broke his jaw recently? That's just it. Also incredibly talented, and there's a ton of different words I can throw out there, but based on just what you see from how much he endures and keeps going through an injury like a broken jaw, the guy's hard as fuck.
I love that as well, because the Irish are hard as fuck. I know that. And I've been hit by an Irishman a few times, and I do not wish to ever be in that situation again. And the idea of a very fucking hard Irishman saying that an Irishman's hard as fuck, it's like, holy shit, that's the pinnacle of hard. That is, must be literally made of granite. He looks like the kind of guy who literally could get smacked in the head with a cinder block, and he'd be like, whatever, mate. That kind of guy. It's that immortal image, isn't it? After he faced Kyle O'Reilly, and they're both fucked up, and he's just looking at him like, I will kill you. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. Most people I know would have crumbled to dust in that moment.
I would have been. Yeah.
I'm going to put my name in that hat too. I would have just went, oh, can someone get me out of here?
I don't think I would have even had the capacity to cry. I would have been clean out after about 1 minute, to be honest. My lungs would have been like, yep, that's it. We're done. It's time to pass away. Right. Session off Martina.
Entertainment.
Right.
But to put after that, pure entertainment, top to bottom, very entertaining. So yeah, entertainment. She's great.
I feel like she's also woefully underappreciated as an actual worker as well, because people see nonsense and that. But that's great. I saw her in a Gunge match with Dave Benson Phillips. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I didn't, unfortunately.
Yeah, she, her and, I don't know if you know Dave Benson Phillips, the TV host, she tagged with him against the No Fun Police in a Gunge match with Rip Tide in Brighton. I was like, what is going on? My brain. Being there live and seeing her give the womb stone, as she likes to call it, which I think is just brilliant personally.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I like, don't get me wrong, I listen to Jim Cornette's podcast, but I don't agree with him on everything, and I know he would have been very, very triggered by that, but no, I love that girl. I think she's put in so much for the scene as well, and people don't
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, like, if I
wrestling to a lot of people, isn't she?
Yeah, I would say if I could add to that, is like, I think entertainment comes to mind first, because she's like, when she's in a ring, that's what she is, continuously, perpetually entertaining, and it's fantastic. But I agree with you to say that, like, people underappreciate her work rate, and also like how much attention she's brought to Ireland and the Irish scene, like as an independent wrestler. I mean, there's not a lot of people from there who have done the same amount of work to bring attention to the scene. And I mean, as a person from there, I mean, I'm grateful for it, because of course, I mean, the more eyes on the scene, the better for everyone who's in it. So yeah, fantastic.
Here's a good one. Aoife Valkyrie.
Valkyrie. I don't know her actually personally, but I can't think of one word. She's incredibly talented, if that counts. I don't know her personally. I've never met her, but she's a fantastic worker. Like, from watching her matches and stuff, and she's really, really, really fucking talented. So talented would be the one word I would pick. Very talented. Yeah.
This isn't one wrestler, actually. It's a group. More Than Hype.
More Than Hype. Fuck. Can I use the same word again? Entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
But those guys, I mean, fuck. I've seen a lot of their stuff, because I mean, we talked about LJ earlier. Sorry if I ramble on, by the way. I don't know if this is supposed to be quick fire.
No, honestly, like, no, some people have been I had one guy on, he was stuck on like the same name for about 10 minutes, and I think I was like, you fancy her, don't you? Obviously, because you can kind of tell. You're just like, yeah. To be fair, like, if I had the opportunity, I'd probably be stuck on Session Moth for a lot longer than I should be. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I think those guys, the three of them, are incredibly talented young guys who work their fucking asses off. Like, apologies for swearing, but work their fucking asses off.
Never apologize for
swearing. And they are incredibly entertaining. So for me, like, entertaining would be the word that first comes to mind for them. It's just, I've never seen a match of theirs where I wasn't like, fuck, I'm entertained. Like, you know, so yeah.
Kenny Omega.
Fuck. One word for Kenny Omega. I don't know. Is eccentric a good one?
I don't like Kenny Omega, and that triggers everybody, and everyone's like, how dare you? And it's like, it's just my cup of tea. I recognize he's a world-class athlete, but the blow-up doll thing was just a bit too much for me. I was like, like,
yeah,
his work
I mean,
in Japan was incredible, so credit to him.
I've always been very much a everyone has their own cup of tea kind of person as far as wrestling goes. Like, people will always like people, even if they're not good, even if they are good, if they're the best in the world, somebody's gonna think you're shit. Like, like, no matter who you are, there's somebody out there who's gonna not like you. So I try not to get myself too worked up if someone doesn't like someone else, because I mean, I honestly mostly don't care. Like, I'm like, okay, you can have your own opinion. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm a big Kenny Omega fan. I think he's fantastic. But I mean, the fact that you're not pisses me off. No, I'm just no. It doesn't. It's irrelevant. I guess it's like everyone is going to have their own perspective. But I think he's obviously a fantastic athlete and obviously one of the best workers in the world. He's done some crazy shit, as you mentioned, with a blow up doll. But I mean, I guess he just likes to entertain people and he just likes having fun. But yeah, I would think eccentric is the first the first word that comes when I think of like his career as a whole and like how he is and like how ridiculous some of his character work sometimes is and how entertaining it is. Yeah, eccentric would be the word that comes to mind.
Would TJ Charles ever find himself wrestling a blow-up doll, do you think, if you were given the opportunity?
I don't know. Would I? It's a strange question. I've never been asked that.
I'm always curious because, like, I know that a lot of what people don't realize, even though I hated the concept, it was facilitated by the fact that obviously his character, like you say, was very kind of out there and wild. So it was like, why not try something incredibly left field? And I know the only other one who really did something similar, I think Kota Ibushi wrestled like an 8-year-old girl or something. I was like,
yeah, Kota Ibushi also wrestled a blow-up doll and somehow took like 6 in a row Canadian destroyers by himself. I don't know how he did that.
I can't take one. The Yeah, the one thing I will say is I didn't like it, but they still had a better match with that Blood Doll than I'll ever have in my career. So fair enough. Like, I can't fucking give too much grief over it. Like,
I mean, I've wrestled dressed as a giant tentacle. So
wow.
yeah, I mean, I think for me,
Was that a
my
personal preference or?
no, it was not.
I just, I'm not kink shaming. People have different, interests and things like that. So.
I've always had the mentality that like if I can get inside a ring, I don't give a shit what I will have to do. If like I love wrestling so much like that if someone gives me shit to do, I will try my hardest to turn that shit into a diamond. It doesn't always work.
I have a big test for you then, and that's get a good match out of me, mate, and we'll see if you really are. We'll put that period as a test. After that, you'll be like, I wish I'd never opened my mouth. Right. Oh, blimey, there's all kinds of names here. Yeah, we'll have to thin it down a bit. Let's select some left field ones because everyone always asks the same. Mark Haskins, that's a good one.
Oh fuck, I love Haskins.
Big fan.
I'm a really big fan of his. I mean, can I use my own nickname, Volatile?
He's volatile. Yeah.
He is, yeah. I would just say about him and Ilya Dragunov is I look to those guys a lot. Excuse me, my voice. I look to these to these guys a lot recently in the last recent years as I try to change myself from the original skater gimmick that I had been given in Ireland into what I currently do now. Because for me, the level of intensity that those two guys wrestle at and like that they sell with and that they move with is like something that I really aspire to like achieve, and like really every time I wrestle try and like unsuccessfully match it, but I try. So fuck, one word for Haskins is very difficult actually. I think this could be the most difficult one. Crazy, because he's a little bit crazy.
Does have that look in his eye, doesn't he? Of like, you're slightly unhinged, aren't you?
Yeah.
He was on that show that I did, that Ring Crew one, the Progress one I mentioned. And do you know what I always think of Mark Haskins? He executes the most beautiful battle rolls I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, I can't do that shit.
The way he goes over people, it's like, what? Like, it's so fluid. And my first kind of real exposure to him, I saw him wrestle Tommy and the Mighty Skull in a triple threat match. I was like, yeah, I was like, holy shit, that's fucking amazing. And it's still to this day one of the greatest matches I've ever seen live. So no, I love Mark Haskins, and I'm pleased for him as well because he got an opportunity in Ring of Honor, and he's that guy who you always thought, is he ever going to get the opportunity to be, shown off? My apologies, my camera's gone again.
Don't worry about it.
Luckily, we're just building towards the end, and then this thing's like, hey, you mind if I shit the bed again because your internet sucks dick?
I hope I hope Mark Haskins never ever just hears the clip of, I think he's crazy. I hope he hears all the shit I said before that.
Otherwise, he'll be coming for us, and I really don't want Mark Haskins to come for us.
Yeah, me neither.
There we are. Technical difficulties eluded. I don't know whether I edited that out, or maybe you can just put up with my nonsense, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how it is. Moving on through the list, a couple more names, and then we'll wrap it up, sir. Volta.
Oof. Monster.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Monster.
How is he not in Kaiju Big Battle? He seems like the perfect person. He doesn't even have to dress up or nothing. He just stands there and destroys buildings. I imagine he just walks up to build. I imagine he's one of those people. You know the old like skit where the elevator won't open or the doors are locked or whatever. He just walks up and goes wham, and it just goes. It's because it's like. Oh, even doors and like animal objects, just fear him. It's that kind of nature.
Speaking of kaiju, maybe that's how I shoehorn myself into a match with him. Like dress as a tentacle, boom, booked.
I gotta ask, how do you end up getting dressed like a tentacle? How does that work? Have you wrestled for Kaiju Big Battle, but you're just not allowed to say so for copyright reasons?
No. So on occasion in the past, Riot have done Kaiju matches, because we had done events at like sometimes they have like Japanese weekends here, and like where there's a lot of anime stuff and people dress up and all these kind of things. And it's a big convention, those kind of things. So usually they want entertainment and stuff like that added, and we would go set up the ring and do wrestling shows or whatever. But as part of it, because it's that kind of weekend, like an anime weekend or whatever, we would always do a kaiju match. And when I first got here to Riot, and I'd been training for a while, I hadn't been booked on any shows yet because I guess nobody knew me. Like I was still new to the place. Like they were just like getting comfortable with me and all these kind of things, which I completely understand. But every show we did, I always took my shit. I always had my boots and everything. And like, I was like, I'm ready to go if you guys need me. And I turned up to a show and I was like, to the guy, I was like, one of the guys, I was like, look, I have my stuff as usual. If you need me, just let me know. And he's like, maybe you don't want to do this because maybe you think it's bullshit, but do you want to wrestle as a giant tentacle tonight? And I just went, yeah, absolutely. Give me the suit right now. So I dressed as a giant tentacle and wrestled a guy dressed as a gigantic gorilla. That was the... I'm sure there's footage of that somewhere if you look for it.
I'm gonna have to dig that out. Yeah, that's no, we're not going past the edit until I have that footage. I just like the idea as a giant gorilla. It was like, cool, I'll turn up without a costume. Case in point, being Arab as well, I can say incredibly Arab. So, and you can go for the technical thing again, and we shall entertain the masses. So that's the only way I'm getting booked in Spain. I'm going to assure you of that. I just think that's fucking cool. That's hilarious. I know I've just got him like, fucking disgraceful. Kenny Omega wrestling a blow doll, and I'm like, in the same vein, I'm like, this guy dresses as a tentacle. He's all right with me, but tough tips. I just don't like you, Kenny. It is what it is. One more name is on this list, actually. We always kind of ask it, so you know it's coming. One word to describe the volatile one himself, TJ Charles.
Shit. One word to describe myself.
Probably volatile, isn't it? Sure.
Yeah, I guess it would just be volatile, right?
Try out the catchphrase. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I do refer to myself as the absolute wanker, so we could go with that.
That's a gimmick if I've ever heard one. I just thought that was an actual gimmick for me. Fair enough. I didn't realise someone had actually entertained it.
I have that printed on a t-shirt.
I was going to say that would be great on a t-shirt, and I thought probably not. But if you've got one, I'll buy one. Yeah, I can have one of those.
Yeah, it says, and some people I think from here maybe didn't understand what it says when they bought it. And some of my friends back home who also as friends bought my merch, like, hey man, I can have one of your shirts. Also, when they got it, were like, why does this t-shirt say absolute wanker on the front of it? I was like, I mean, you saw the picture before I sent this to you.
I cannot believe no one in America has put, because wanker isn't like it's not a derogatory term in America. I still remember Regal calling JBL wanker on a WWE show once, and everyone was like, I'm sorry, what? A wonker? A what? Like, they just don't get it. And I was just like, you've got to put that on there. Like, it's like when you wrestle in Japan. I love watching like New Japan. It's like, you know, everyone's just using the big C words and the worst words possible because it's like, well, it's in English, so I don't give a shit. I remember when Ospreay calling Takahashi like the C word about 50 times in a match. I'm like, what? Like, fair enough. Cool. Different style, different horses for different courses. I appreciate that. Okay, we'll go with absolute wanker. So it's not one word, but it's one encompassing position. Before we let you go, social media. Where can people find you on social media? Because that's what we want to help build and drive traffic to.
Instagram and Twitter, fairly easy. Volatile_TJC. It's pretty simple to find. If you have fancy graphics, you could put them here, like, but I don't know if you do.
Yeah, I will.
I also stream on Twitch under 12 Monkeys. That's just one of my Twitch name. If anyone likes watching video games or incredibly, I don't know, sometimes grumpy because I stream in the mornings and if I haven't had coffee. If you enjoy watching people stream Skyrim and when they're grumpy in the morning, come on down, 12 Monkeys on Twitch. But yeah, they're my social medias. I appreciate you allowing me to plug them. Oh, and also this t-shirt is from Squared Circle, who are I can't speak, apparel company from the US and Canada, who have also been kind enough to send me some free shit and sponsor me as it would be. So also give a good shout out to them guys. They're pretty awesome. They sent me some nice t-shirts and hats and stuff. I figured I should at least wear one on the podcast and give those guys some props.
I don't know why I'm not wearing my own t-shirt for once. Like, never mind. So I just self-promotion thing that well. I've like I always say though, it's about the rest. It's about the talent. Of course, you should be plugging your social media. Have you got a merch shop, a link where anyone can buy t-shirts or whatever, or do they need to contact you privately?
Currently, I do not have a merch shop. It's something I will be getting set up once we start getting back to shows. So if people do want merch and want to have a t-shirt that says Absolute Wanker on the front of it, I mean, if that's your jam, yeah,
Give me.
DM me on Twitter, DM me on Instagram. Again, Volatile TJC. Hit me up and I can send you out a shirt. No problem.
Awesome. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure. Can you ship internationally just so I can check for our American friends because they'll love those?
Yeah, I will ship internationally, no problem at all. Yeah, that's absolutely cool.
I've been trying to explain to them what a wanker is. I call them that enough. This is just how awful a person I am. Actually, all my American friends have started using words like the C word and wanker and things like that. They start, all right, mate. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not American. What's going on there? I'm starting to very, very slowly infect them with my horrible ways, and I apologize to America for that. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget to DM him because if I don't see a spate of people wearing absolute wanker shirts, I'll be so disappointed. We must all go to a show in Spain wearing those. I'm going to bring us out on in force to wear those. They're so cool. I'm really excited because I actually had plans to come out and watch Riot anyway, and to see all the crazy plays. So hopefully I'll be able to actually see you in person, which would be awesome. And if I'm very lucky, we can maybe collar you for half an hour or something. I can have a little chat with you at the show or whatever. So
yeah, that would be awesome.
And obviously I love watching international wrestling. Thank you for coming on. It's lovely to have a fresh face, someone who can offer a different identity and something that's a bit different to the wrestling world, mate.
Thank you very much. No, it's been a pleasure. I had a lot of fun and I appreciate you having me on. It's been fucking awesome.
Thank you. No, it's been an absolute pleasure. He's very charming, ladies and gentlemen, but don't be fooled. He is volatile by name, volatile by nature. And check out 12 Monkeys as well, the stream, because I know how hard Twitch streamers work, because a lot of my friends who work in that kind of field, and it's quite cool. And it's a lot of fun. It's good for downtime. So get a coffee, chill out, and watch 12 Monkeys. And obviously, like you say, graphics, they're all over. I'm like, oh my God, we're getting bombarded, but it's all good. And I will endeavor to make sure that you have seen him dressed as a tentacle. TJ Charles, the greatest tentacle in wrestling. Thank you very much for joining us at the Wrestle Plug, mate.
If nothing else, that will be how I'm remembered.
Bless you. Thank you very much.